Now we're streaming, but it's the wrong stream. It's a new stream. I had to do this. Obviously, when I create a stream, learnings for next time. When we create a stream, we have to stick to the stream. Otherwise, it will close it down. But that's fine. So I hope people can migrate over from the other side, from the other stream to this one. And I'm just going to get going. That's our first hiccup for the day on our first stream. So thank you very much. When an AI system makes a decision, who is accountable for it? That question runs through everything I do. It is in Teponovera. It is in Teponovera, the open source system that I have created. I built, which tests whether an AI put can actually be traced back to the verifiable claim. It is in my books, including Lethal by Design, which documents the accountability gap in military AI, and in Space Mafia, which maps the same gap into orbital systems where the stakes are sovereignty and the actors are largely unregulated. It is in the manifesto of the Humanist Party and Free as in Theft, which trace how we got here, the philosophical roots of the problem and the history of the software movement that prefigured it. My central argument is simple. In this book, by the way, every organization deploying AI is making a choice between two vectors. The heaven vector, accountable, explainable, human overseen. The Skynet vector, the default outcome when the choices are not made. This is not a science fiction scenario. The accumulated result of procurement decisions, governance waivers, and committees that moved on before the consequences arrived. I'm Andreas Hamburger, AI ethics practitioner and enterprise architect Wellington. Welcome to our first buggy live stream in preparation of the premiere for the long-form documentary based on my book, The Manifesto of the Humanist Party. Very buggy. Let's get into it. As you can see up the top, we've got a presentation lined up. I'm just going to get the screen up for it. Being over myself. So ethics, often people take ethics and morality as the same thing. Morality is really your blueprint of what is good and what is not good, your own personal blueprint. A morality could be your own faith, belief, and so on. While ethics is a more structural, inside organizational or wider system of rules that could be overarching a legal system, for example, overarching a company, overarching a software implementation could have ethics. And the question today that we ask is ethics dead? Is the system of rules that are around the software, especially the AI systems that get deployed, is it dead or not? Again, first live stream, it's all live, certainly not as this is not going to the next slide. Right, now it's the next slide. Here we go. So we're at the point where I would call it the agentic inflection point. And on the one side, we have this sort of prompt system of a reactive AI where we put the prompt in, the machine answers, and then we have an action through it. And we iterate through that. It's more like this chatbot sort of AI system that we're all used to if we're using AI systems. And usually the productivity gains that are measured there are around 10 to 30%. And so, okay, fairly substantial if you know what you're doing, but not necessarily on a major uplift. When we look at agentic AI, so broken down workflows into various sort of iterations, we have a human in the loop, still, but the human in the loop becomes more of an observer and that can interrupt. And the system iterates itself around the goal and executes the plan. And the human within this system, it could be a workflow that has 15, 20 steps, would oversee this workflow. It could possibly also influence it. And that's really your agentic AI system in a nutshell. Even though a lot of organizations talk about it, really only 11% of organizations maintain a validated oversight over these loops and these autonomous agents. So from the very few percent, we're talking about 6% of organizations that have actually deployed this sort of systems. Out of those, only 11%, so very small minority, we're talking about in the zeros percent of organization actually have oversight, so have the human that controls that loop. In the central paradigm between heaven and Skynet that you'll see in this, also in this 1.5 hour documentary that's coming up, is on the one side the so-called heaven vector, and that is the accountable, explainable, human overseen system that's designed to extend human capability in an equitable way. So a system that's very open, but that's been engineered specifically to be accountable and explainable and logged at any point in time. I call this the heaven vector because at any point in time, the human can tweak and decide, make decisions on it. On the other side, we'll have the Skynet vector, which, as the analogy of the Skynet from Terminator would explain, is the opposite. So the unaccountable, the unconstrained optimization, the loop that just goes on, the AI that makes the decisions that itself. Given the fact that I do believe that AI without human input really is artificial incompetence, you get a fairly incompetent system. And artificial intelligence only becomes intelligent when there is a human in the loop. So the 4 dimension of an ethical deployment within an organization are one, intent. So you actually have to have the intent to achieve something specific. It needs to be examined and not leave unexamined the intent itself. What is the system actually designed to do? We always have a constraint that is hard-coded within the system, as opposed to a paper policy. So in a Skynet environment, you would have a paper policy nobody really looks at, whereas in a heaven sort of a deployment, you'd have a hard-coded code inside the system that would verify that you actually achieved your policy and your goals. What is the system designed not to do? Very often these questions are not looked at. We also have a very much accountability, human overseeing accountability, and a named human that actually can make that decision and can answer when something goes wrong, and can also interact with it to make sure that something possibly doesn't go wrong. And the consequence of it, really, what bears the cost of failure? What is the cost of failure in itself? Where does it lead, the whole system, when it fails? Does it lead to somebody dying, or does it lead to somebody not getting insurance approved? And so on, those are the questions that will lead us within this documentary. The human cost of architecture, really, we look at, and that's the theme within the documentary is we have a patient profile, we have corporate matrices and constraints, we have a human clinician, ideally, that is involved, for example, in an AI system that involves patients, and that human clinician should ideally create some sort of friction. I call it maximum friction, meaning that the clinician actually should really be able to make decisions. However, in reality, often in these implementations, and I have examples within the documentary, we don't have that happening. There is frictionless acceptance of the algorithm making a decision, and the error rate on appeal is. So people who actually appeal, 90% of them get found out to be errors. And and very few actually appeal, which says a lot, really, because people leave systems unconstrained very often and don't really appeal. So we have 4 domains in which I'm working, I'm researching in. And obviously within these 4 domains, one is enterprise and sovereign data systems. I won't go into too much detail on it, but from our New Zealand perspective, Maori data sovereignty is a very big one. Also, when it comes to artificial intelligence, because of our treaty and our nativeness here that we really hold dear. The second one, the one I would look at is within this sort of enterprise system is what I call the AIEA model. That is to create a system of ethical guardrails that are implemented within the architecture itself. And I won't go into too much detail on it. There is more articles on LinkedIn on this topic. I have written a report on this topic. The second domain would be the commons and the enclosure cycle. So we have over time, this automatic drive to close systems, and that comes through economic pressures, corporate pressures, and that sort of enclosure resistance is happening all the time. While openness has to actually be fought for and wanted and willed and actually created. It doesn't happen by itself, be it open source software or be it also in an open implementation of an AI system. So, for example, OpenAI was created as an open system, so the ChatGPT environment, but very quickly it was enclosed. And it was also enclosed so that we cannot actually look into it. The third domain of accountability domain would be the military AI. My latest book is about military AI. It's called Lethal by Design. In a few days, in 6 days, next Friday, we'll have the 9 episodes starting on this domain. And very interesting documentary based on my book that will guide you through in 9 episodes what it really means within the military to have this sort of unaccountable AI happening and also accountable AI. So again, Heaven and Skynet as this sort of thesis, antithesis, counterpolar system. And obviously very timely. We look at Ukraine, we look at Iran, war, all these conflicts. This is really as up to date as it gets when it comes to AI and accountability. And the fourth domain within this sphere is the orbital AI sphere, which I've also published about extensively. And the lawlessness that we have, the sort of pirate radio type of situation up in the sky, up in the low orbit, systems around, obviously we know companies like SpaceX that shoot up all these satellites, and there's literally a legal vacuum up there, and they can these companies can pretty much do what they want up there, and very few regulations stop them if they're clever to do so, which they are, of course. And with the SpaceX IPO that just happened last week and make one individual the richest person in human history, really good on him. But it really shows where this is going. This is kind of complete control, also from a financial, economical perspective, and from and of course a completely legal free space. I'm not judging. Again, I'm just painting a picture here. I'm very much not judging. It's just how it is. In the software development environment, we have something called the Collingridge dilemma or the Collingridge trap, which means that the more a system, a new paradigm gets implemented, the harder it is to actually change it, the more entrenched it gets in corporate environments and so on. And so we are in this situation at the moment where we may still be able to influence it, right? Because it's a very early stages of this sort of entrenchment. But the time is literally running out. So we have to design the choice architectures now. So meaning architectures we actually choose as opposed to architectures that just happen because of systems that are allowed to be implemented unconstrained. So from a philosophical perspective, and I'm not going to go too much into this, here, because this is what this documentary is about, is the four great philosophers, Immanuel Kant, John Stuart Mill, Aristotle, and Jonas, that bring in sort of these very practical, and again, it can be very complicated philosophy, but it goes around, can I universalize the logic of this algorithm? Can I make a rule out of it that is valid for the whole world? Have I measured the cost for the most vulnerable person in the system? Very important when you implement environments that obviously in the social field or around patients and so on. And does deploying the system de-skill me or cultivate practical wisdom? So is it actually worse for me, right? Am I giving up skills here by implementing this system? And then last one would be, what do I owe the person who cannot consent to the system's authority? So where are the limits of this authority of that system, and is it allowed to do what it wants really, and the decisions are valid without unconstrained or without constraint? So the synthesis, in a sense, of it all, we have the Skynet and the heaven alternatives, and in those four spheres: enterprise, the commons, military, and orbital space. This is the core table of everything, right? So where is the synthesis? Where is the way in the middle? This is an open question. This really has to be decided in every single implementation, I believe. And it's not that we have to decide on the heaven vector. It is not like this, because the middle path is often very much the best one. And the heaven alternative may be too hard in a lot of way and too expensive, and so you have to find that sort of middle ground that is right, that is ethical. This is really what it's about. And in a sense, we have to find that place where, if we falsifies everything, our assumptions, where do we get, right? How do we know if we're winning? And how do we know that these 5 conditions for the heaven vector are implemented? So in a sense, there is really no neutral ground. Every deployment executed without ethical examination is a preference for the Skynet vector. We're not just documenting systems, we're designing humanity's future. And we need to ask those 4 questions that were just before. This gives you an overview of the literature that I have written in these topics. Each of the domains I've presented, there is a book available. Now you can buy them on Amazon now. And this is really where we're at, also to question time. I think it's only 10 minutes away for the premiere. So I'll bring up my question browser window. So in a sense, I've prepared some questions just in case we don't have any questions on the stream. So one of them would be, obviously, if people know me, some of my work, I'm a public servant. How can I even, as a public servant, write about these topics? It's a very simple answer. I write about them in a very balanced way, in a way where I comply to what we call the Public Service Commission's, Public Service Commissioners' social media guidance, and I also don't name any particular policies and politicians, and I'm certainly not judgmental. Also, I've worked in the field for over 30 years. I have a master's in logic and artificial intelligence and in ethics, and so as such, from a long time ago. So this is my field. I'm allowed to research in this field and really write about it, and as long as I stay, as I said, in this sort of balanced, in balanced manner. And so we are inside the world. It's happening right now, right? Every week. And you can follow me on LinkedIn, where I write articles every day about this topic. Every day has a new topic. On our channel, as you know, there is an artificial avatar that is certainly far more polished than this real person. And this real more polished sort of avatar is presenting every day also in a very balanced manner, so that I also again fulfill my duties as a public servant by not necessarily myself being up there. Today is an exception. This is a live stream, and in the same way as I can be on podcasts about my books, I can be on a live stream on it. But otherwise, we're very in a sphere that is changing every day. That's why every day there is an episode on the channel. The channel's also grown quite substantially over the last 3 months. I'm really quite honored about that. It also shows that there is a real need for a deep dive into these topics, and not necessarily either go down the route of the alarmism of, oh, the end of the world is nearing, and on the other side, the get rich quick with AI themes. This is very much a channel for tech leaders that require deep dives into cybersecurity in the world of AI, and the other topics that are around artificial intelligence, and again today about AI ethics. So this is not necessarily your entertainment channel where you can just switch off. This is more about switching on and using your brain cell for humanity. I'm building up a community of people that want to do that, exactly that. I'm building up a community of what I call of people that join the humanist party. It's not a real party. It's more of a party as in group of people. And we are humanists. We want to put the humans in the center, humans in the loop, so that we can make ethical and good decisions. Because let's not forget that AI is incompetent without a human in the loop, and nothing will change on that. The AI is not a self-conscious system, even though some people will paint it that way. And AGI in my books is general incompetence, and what makes it really intelligent is the human, and the intelligent human. An incompetent human, I'm afraid, will also lead AI astray to be even more incompetent. So we all deal with it, and as such, we can only learn and get better, get less incompetent when it comes to dealing with artificial incompetence, and intelligence will come through that sort of learning and dealing with it. And another question, what is one thing you want someone to do differently on Monday morning after watching this documentary? The most important thing to do differently on Monday morning, this is the next second sort of parallel vector that I bring in, is this Monday morning protocol, is to disrupt the default unexamined deployment by forcing a deliberate pause before a system goes live. So actually think about it, actually write down the rules, the architectures that we're implementing, those questions that I will ask within this documentary. The intent question, the consequence question, the character question, the vulnerability questions. Who is vulnerable? Who are we protecting? Who are the people that necessarily would fall through the cracks by using an artificial intelligence system within a corporate organization, and so on. So various people will find various positives within these topics. You'll have cybersecurity specialists and CISOs that will find their knowledge. I have a whole series on that on Thursdays for them, but also board members and executives get on Sunday with their news and their understanding of how to implement this on a board level, have also very practical checklists and so on. That we'll bring in every week. And at the same time, I also talk a lot about open systems and Linux in particular, which is my background as a Linux specialist and architect. I've implemented many Linux type of systems, open source systems, when they weren't really that popular. So next question. Let me have a look. So I reference philosophers. So why should a developer or a manager care about 18th century philosophers? Well, technically speaking, or ancient philosophers, you shouldn't need to care. It's really not necessarily an academic exercise why I bring them in. But as a developer and architect, you should care about it, because in the context of deploying AI, these philosophical frameworks, they have developed thousands of years ago, partly. They function as a practical design specification and operational tools. And you can actually give these design specifications during your design phase to the LLM, to the agent also as code. I've shown some of that within the so-called Vera system that I've developed, the Tepono Vera verification system that allows you to minimize or to get rid of hallucinations entirely. In the same way, we can implement ethical systems around the same sort of principles that we decide there. So these philosophical frameworks can become rules that we can implement in designs, and it can lead to an ethical system. Obviously after testing, and very much in code, not necessarily in policy. Very often AI ethics people are lawyers, and they develop brilliant policies that don't get implemented, and as such are rather pointless. This is about implementing it in a technical sphere as code and make it worth and valuable that way. So I think we've got a few minutes left. I'm just going to check if there are any more questions left. We're live at the moment here, yeah. The camera quality is pretty bad today, but I'm sure we're gonna get that all fixed up a little bit better over time. No, otherwise it looks we're all good, and we've got a few minutes to go. I will leave you to it after this, and go straight to my channel page, please, and I will put the link for the premiere into the comments. And please enjoy the premiere, watch it, tell other people about it. It's a young channel. The channel only existed for 3 months. The growth has been quite outstanding, but it's also a lot of people that don't necessarily watch television or YouTube. And you are all technology leaders, and as such, I'm really privileged that you will take time and to watch these topics, and that you've subscribed to the channel. And thank you very much again for being on this stream. And I wish you all the best and a lot of fun watching our documentary. And thanks for joining our first stream. I'm sure I'll get a bit better over time and a bit more settled. This is the first time that I've been on a YouTube live stream. And